Module 8, Legal Aspects of Teacher Evaluation. I'll start out with the article summaries, followed by Central Heights evaluation method, and I'll finish up with a teacher evaluation legal case. First of all, teacher evaluation, an issue overview by Stephen Sawchuk. The teacher evaluation has been greatly reformed since the early 2000s because of pressure from the following groups and people. First of all, educational research on teaching quality has led a lot of the charge of how to properly evaluate teaching, as well as interest in building teacher effectiveness and that desire from special interest groups as well as politically. The push to change state laws on evaluation of teachers has been a factor. And then last, the political push to dismiss poor quality teachers. The federal government and many philanthropy groups have provided the funding needed to overhaul the evaluation process. So how this new evaluation process would work is it's much more complex than the previous evaluation tools. It has a more objective-based framework to kind of limit the biasness or the relationship between the teacher and the evaluator and keep that from showing through on the evaluation. And then last, even the most basic form of the evaluation started with 50% of the mathematical equation coming from student performance, mostly on standardized testing. But in time, it's been amended to make up less and less of the teacher's overall score. The union's response was obviously, the teachers' union response was obviously one of deep concern. First of all, one of their concerns was salary compensation based on results of evaluation that was deemed to be very unfair. And then the second concern was using standardized testing to equate teacher quality and even salary, which this would lead to, both of these would lead to the problem of teaching to the test, which we all know is not the most effective way of teaching. And then the other area that they entailed about it being unfair is that only 15 to 30% of teachers teach students that are currently up for standardized testing. I know I personally don't teach any students that are up for standardized testing in my content area, and I would not want to be evaluated based on their performance on content areas that I have very little to do with. So the question is the new system working? The mostly Republican lawmakers have tried to use the new teacher evaluation as a way to tear down many protective structures for teachers, such as tenure and due process. And then the other side of the spectrum, which is mostly Democrat, has likewise supported the reform of evaluation of educators, but for the reason of making educators and ultimately education better for the students and society. Time will tell if the new system's working or if it has had a positive or a negative effect. With most of the things in education, it takes time to be proven. The new system this article was called Teacher Evaluation Heads to the Courts by the same person, Stephen Sawchuk. This is mostly talking about legal cases that have come up because of the new evaluation method. I just kind of summarized them into 5 bullets. First of all, there's court cases talking about using standardized test scores in the evaluations. Then there was cases on merit pay for teachers of high achieving students. And then the dismissal of tenure teachers without due process because of the results of an evaluation. The fourth one that he talked about was states imposing evaluation methods over district evaluation methods. And then the last would be inconsistent evaluation results and uses of those results. In the final article, Teacher Evaluation by the National Education Association, they talked most at the beginning about the Every Student Succeeds Act, which gave the power back to the states, gave them more say over their state education system and less regulations from the federal government. Puts more responsibility on the states to develop their own system, and it is grounded in educational research and proven educational practices. It allows for schools to be evaluated using more than just test scores. We know that there's a lot more that goes into determining if a school is effective for their students than just results on a standardized test. And then last, it promotes use of multiple measures of success in evaluating teachers, such as observation rubrics, and gives the kind of professional development to the evaluators, and allows them to be trained on how to give quality feedback and support to those teachers. It is a strong belief of NEA that the evaluation system should have input from teachers and administration alike. They should work together in developing this system, ultimately to get teacher buy-in. The more teacher buy-in that you have, the more effective that evaluation system can be. And the ways that they suggested would be through collective bargaining, committee work, or any other way of partnering administration and teachers. Moving on to how Central Heights' evaluation method. So I have a new administration team this year, so I have not gotten to see fully how they plan to do it. They are doing some great things, but I have not been up for the evaluation yet. I think it'll probably happen in March or April of this year. But I have had a walkthrough evaluation, a 5-minute walkthrough, so I will talk about that. And then I'm going to spend a bulk of my time talking about the former administrator's way of evaluating me. So first of all, the current administrative team, they started out the school year by being in the classroom on a daily basis. I would see my principal at least once a day for the first 2 to 3 weeks. It made a lot of teachers uneasy. It made a lot of students uneasy, but really they were just there to try to get a feel for how the school was operating and where they could be of help. Every teacher that was up for evaluation was asked to write 2 professional SMART goals and submit that to our principal by September 15th. So I've done that step. And then the third thing, in his email, Mr. Mateel told us that by mid-February he was hoping to have that he would be able to have completed the pre-conference meetings and many of the evaluations. I know I'm one of the last ones to get evaluated this year. I think he started with the newer teachers, and me being in year 4, I'm probably closer to the end of who's being evaluated this year. My current administrative team, also did a 5-minute walkthrough evaluation of me in January. Prior to this walkthrough, Mr. Mateel, my principal, emailed all of the staff the Google form that he would be using. So he's very transparent about what was the expectations. And then he came in and quietly walked into my room, stood in the back of the class with his iPad and wrote down or typed out things that he observed. And then within about 3 minutes of him walking out of my door, he had emailed me the results from that Google form. I found this Google form to be very useful, and I got some good quality feedback from it in just 5 minutes. First of all, it evaluated me on student engagement as a percentage of how many students were actually engaged. Then objectives posted, yes or no. That's one area that I struggle with, and he came in on a day that I did not have the objectives posted. So I've made the effort to fix that just from this 5-minute evaluation or walkthrough. The type of instruction, whether it's teacher-led, group-led, individually led instruction, and then cognitive levels that students were applying or that the lesson invoked, whether it be receiving knowledge, applying knowledge, analyzing and evaluating knowledge, or creating. And then he gave a score of relevance. I believe it was 1 to 3 on how relevant it was to the content area or to the world around you. Then he gave a score of 1 on a scale of 1 to 3 on teacher engagement, and then an effective use of class time with a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being very effective, 1 being ineffective use of time. Then we did a check for understanding category, yes or no, whether teacher checked or not applicable, whether the teacher checked for understanding with the students. And the last 2 factors was teacher feedback, giving feedback to the students. If that was observed, he clicked yes. If no, no if it was not, and not applicable if there was no opportunity observed. And then learning styles, whether it was auditory, tactile, kinesthetic, or visual, or a combination of any one of those. Found this to be very effective and useful for me as a teacher. My former administrative team, first of all, there was no unannounced evaluations in 3 years of me teaching there. They always worked it out on the exact time and day that they were going to be in my classroom. No spontaneous evaluations happened. it kind of limited what they actually the genuine teaching that they got to see from me if I had 2 or 3 weeks to plan for their evaluation. There was no formal walkthrough with feedback that they did in those 3 years either. The administrative team did a very simple evaluation method. It started with a pre-evaluation meeting to discuss the process, professional goals, and to set up a time and date for the evaluation. They observed a full class period, and then they organized the evaluation notes and prepared for the post-conference meeting. Once they were prepared for that and could work into the schedule, they would have the post-conference meeting with me, discuss where I was proficient or where I was maybe some areas of concern, and then I would go in and give my response or my reflection to the evaluation. And that last step was really the only way that you could give a concern about an unfair evaluation or voice your opinion if that had happened. The court case that I'm going to reference is teacher evaluation, the teacher evaluation legal case that I'm going to reference here is Letterman versus King. Basically, Sherry Letterman was a 4th grade teacher in New York State, and she challenged the VAM, which stands for Value Added Model, the VAM score that caused her to be considered an ineffective teacher. This particular case is not a teacher versus a school district, but instead is a teacher versus a state system that was corrupt for her. She received a VAM rating of 14 out of 20 in the previous school year, and then the next year the year that's in question, she received a VAM score of 1 out of 20. This was a concern because that VAM score is based on your students' performance on math and English language arts assessments, and the 2 years were almost identical as far as their performance, and they were well above the state average for New York. The VAM system was determined that it actually hurt students hurt teachers who had students that were well above the average, as well as hurt teachers that had students well below the average, mostly because it operated on a predetermined bell curve that put teachers in 4 predetermined places. She had the support of her administration, and that's what probably was the most concerning about this court case, that her superintendent and principal went on record as saying that she was a great and effective teacher that had no flaws. But they had no control over this 1 out of 20 that called her an ineffective teacher. They had no control over it, and it's kind of concerning that the people who are in the position to be able to directly evaluate her call her a great teacher, but yet the state has this statistical mathematical equation that says differently. The purpose of this court case was to point out the inaccuracies and the unfairness of VAM, and to get the 1 out of 20 rating off of her record, and to keep the VAM score from affecting her employment and or merit pay. The results of this case, the rating of ineffective was ordered to be removed and considered arbitrary and capricious, and the whole New York system of value-added model was not deemed to be not deemed to be arbitrary, but it was in this particular instance.